So today we are meeting with Orina Soobiah from GD Collections to talk to us about the collections process and their role within collections within the company and what they do for Whitfields and our clients. Thank you, Orina, for meeting with me. So let's talk about what exactly does a debt collector do? And I must admit, I was quite surprised to see that a debt collector is not a very broad-shouldered gentleman with a baseball bat. So tell me a bit more about debt collection and your role within debt collection.
So basically, we look at it in the greater scheme of things. With field property management, we were looking at different ways, different dispute resolutions that we can try and help our clients and the best way forward. So we thought of a process called GD debt collection, or we thought of moving over to a debt collection services. So basically what a debt collection service will do is we get a handover of accounts, and obviously they would then assess the account. They would use every method possible to try and get a hold of these owners, whereby they would contact the owner, and thereafter they would send the owner an email, but they would do that within like maybe perhaps 3 times in a month, just to try and get a hold of these owners. And we've seen by doing that, collection rate has actually increased, whereby owners don't want to pay more, and it's better for schemes in that way.
Thank you. So the ultimate result that we're looking at is for the clients to pay their contributions more swiftly. Because we've said it repeatedly, is that the contributions, the monthly contributions that the scheme uses to pay all their services is the lifeblood of every scheme. And if people don't pay, then the scheme actually cannot function. So, and that's where GD Collections would come in, would make that contact with a client that has fallen in arrears, and would just try to get that client to pay or make a commitment to pay. Yes. Is my understanding correct?
Yeah, no, 100%. That is definitely it, because I feel like you have to, by initiating that contact and just getting a hold of that person, sometimes we all forget we have a commitment, and just by making that phone call or by sending that email, just going that extra step, it really does help owners, which is ultimately the most important thing at the end of the day.
Okay. And tell me, now, nobody likes to pay for something that's not necessary, but under the circumstances, how does the fees work for debt collectors? Can you charge anything like that you want, or is there a set fee that you can charge?
How I wish, but unfortunately not. They are regulated by a body, so they are regulated by the Debt Collection Council, and they are only allowed to charge in respect of Regulation 12 and Extra B. So there's a set tariff in the Government Gazette that allows you to charge a specific amount. So they can't just charge you exorbitant fees, which is why we also used a debt collection company, because if you have a look at their fees, if you have to hand it over to an attorney, the fee is quite much more reasonable compared to what you would get if you go to an attorney. So yeah, no, it is regulated by a body.
So let me understand the process. So immediately a client falls in arrears with his or her levies, the account would then be handed over to a debt collector like yourselves, like GD Collections. GD Collections would make contact with that defaulting owner and urge that owner to either pay or at least make an arrangement to pay as soon as possible. Should the owner still not be able to pay for whatever reason, that account would then be handed over to a different team, would then follow the legal collection process thereafter. So the GD Collections window is very small. Is that my understanding?
No, most certainly. So GD Debt Collection actually works on all of the 30-day accounts. So they have 30 days in which to action it. So we generally run it from the 7th to the 7th of every month. And then if the owner then decides that, they're not going to pay, or they can't afford to pay it will then get handed over back to Whitfield Property Management, and then their legal team will then proceed further. But the beautiful part about our legal department is that we try to put so many avenues in which to try and assist our owners, so that you don't break up those costs of the attorneys. For example, we have something now that the CSOS department, which we've created as well. So if the account gets handed over to GB debt collection and they can't action the account, it will get handed back to the legal team, and then they will try and initiate contact again one more time, just to try and get the owner to pay and to settle. But if that fails and we have a CSOS resolution, then we can hand it over to our CSOS department, and the costs there are quite low compared to the attorneys as well.
Yes, but eventually, when it does get to an attorney, that's the worst part, I often say, of this role as a managing agent, that you have to engage with an attorney to try and, just get the amounts owed by that defaulting owner to our clients. The schemes are so reliant on the owners to pay promptly each month in order for all the different services, including security, including garden maintenance, including insurance for the scheme, to be paid on time every month. If an owner fails to pay his or her dues, then you can't cover those costs. I mean, where would the money come from?
Yeah, exactly. No. And that's why we try, we really just try at the early stage to catch that debt, because, once you go into arrears and you leave that account, to try and catch it, it's just impossible. So with our mechanisms here, by handing it over to a debt collection company, that's not going to charge you so much, but to try and get in that debt, it's really just to try and assist those owners who sometimes, can't afford to pay their levies.
Yes. So the idea is not to be too harsh on a client, but to try and assist where possible, as a reminder, as almost as a way to get that owner, just a commitment from that defaulting owner to pay, so that that there are no unnecessary fees added to that client's account, and then ultimately onto the schemes. It places another burden on the scheme. So thank you so much for explaining. And I just want to check if my levies have been paid before I'm married.
Yes, you don't want to come to GB debt collection.
But thank you for your time.
No, thank you for having me in. Yeah.